Get ready. Don't miss it. Here comes the intro. All right, already, enough. This isn't a music video. We got to get to work. My earliest memory is riding in my grandfather's boat. Arm over the side, hand in the spray. I've spent much of the rest of my life chasing this feeling. All of that has led to this. The wooden boat experience. Certainly not a boat, but definitely boating related. I created this lamp over the last month or so in the studio. A lot goes into these lamps, modifying the prop as well as polishing it. This is a split section of an old oar. It gets epoxied back together. Then 6 panels are cut, leaded, and soldered together. Scenes are painted on and kiln fired. All this glass is very permanent, much like a church window. I epoxied the fitting into the shaft, which was stained before varnishing it. Now we don't have several weeks to get the varnish on this piece. This is part of a lamp I'm making, and that's why I grabbed the Lust, which you can put a lot of coats on a lot quicker. And I don't want a real shininess to this because of the light being right next to it. It's good. It would be too much reflection. And this isn't supposed to be the highlight of the lamp, the stained glass is, but it needs to look good. So probably 7-8 coats of Lust, 2-3 days. This is the lamp I'll be working on next. This is a single slumped glass shade. It's actually 2 layers of glass melted together and then slumped into that shape. There'll be 2 light fixtures on the end of this S piece, and of course it's got an old prop, and it'll have scenes of wooden boats on top here, so when you light it up you'll see that, and those get painted and fired in the kiln over there. So that'll be the next project. How's that, better? Oh, Wesley saves the day again. So I was saying that my camera was not working properly when I went to start the stream. The little green light on top of the on the iMac wasn't on, and I'm like, what is going on with that? And I realized it wasn't anything I could change without restarting the computer, which, as you know, with these computers nowadays, they don't restart very fast like they used to. Now do you have voice? John is saying he still doesn't, but everybody else is saying better, so I hope I'm okay. That last video seemed a little bit quiet. Am I wrong about that? It seemed on this end like it was a little quiet. I'm not quite sure what was going on with that. But anyway, so it's a short week. Today's Tuesday, and John's got his audio back, so that's good. Today's Tuesday, and we're obviously 2 days ahead of time. But I've got some things that I have to do later in the week. I won't be working on the boat anymore for a couple of days. The video will come out Friday. It'll be this recorded video with a little bit of a bonus at the end. There's something that wouldn't fit in the last video, but I'm going to add that on to Fridays for the recording, so you can watch that and see how I use scrapers and which ones I use. So that's all that you're going to be missing out on this. We've got a couple more videos to go today. Let me show you one really quick. Let me just pop this up. It's real short. The bonfire stuff came. Sweatshirt. T-shirt. Another t-shirt for somebody else. And another t-shirt. Well, guaranteed that the weather will warm up now that I've got a new sweatshirt. I like that. Excellent. I think I'll be wearing that for the live event this weekend. So you can see that I got some of the floor in the addition. That's where I was with that. That's about halfway across the room. And I will be wearing one of those shirts this Sunday. So this Sunday I'm going to have a live event. I don't want to tell you what it is ahead of time, but it has to do with a couple of Patreon members, and it has to do with another location. So it ought to be fairly interesting what is happening there. And that'll be also part of the following Friday's video, because I won't be able to work on the boat again until probably Monday or so. Monday or Tuesday, somewhere in there. So that thing will happen around 1 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday. And it will involve some Lymans and some other wooden boats. I don't know how many, but it ought to be pretty interesting. And it's boats that I've never seen before. So I'm really looking forward to that. Let me just want to thank, while I'm talking, our Patreon members. They're all listed here. Thank you guys and for all that you do in supporting me. It really is appreciated. And you can see that behind me, the kitchen's even a mess. We're trying to get ready for the stuff that we have to do for the next few days. And it's just a little crazy here right now. So I got 2 more videos. And the first one has to do, they're not by days today. They're by subject. And the first one is the Chris Craft. So let's watch that. Other than a bit of varnishing, I didn't get to work on the Chris Craft until Monday morning. But once I did work on it, I got a lot done in one day. What I just did with the blue tape was I started it on this side and then I stretched it over to this side. But by starting on that side, I had kind of pre-stressed the tape a little bit in manipulating it, and it wasn't nice and straight. So I started here, had it rolled around the edge, brought it over to where I wanted it here. Then I went back and released that side and kind of let the stress come out of it and brought it back to where it wants to be. Now what I don't want to do is hit here and start wiping my hand across, because I could shove this tape up and down. I want to make sure that it's on there in a few spots so it's not going to shift. Then I'm going to go lightly across. And then I can come back and actually burnish it down. We do want to make sure we concentrate on the edge where it could bleed. Top edge doesn't matter as much. Boy, won't it be satisfying to cover that up? Can't wait. Okay, we're gonna paint the bottom. First coat. I've never worn one of these Tyvek suits for painting before. Total Boat sent me this. I'm gonna give it a shot. I don't think we'll be able to hide between the red and this white outfit whether I'm actually a clean painter or not by the time I get done with this. Let's check and see. One thing I found with bottom paint that really helps to get it, you still got to stir it. But if the night before you flip the can over, make sure the top's on well, that stuff will move its way from being stuck to the bottom. It won't thoroughly mix, but it won't all be stuck. Now, I didn't do that until about half an hour ago. I totally forgot about it last night. But this isn't quite as hard to stir as the stuff I've used before, which is the copper bronze. We're getting there. Christy, you were right. I needed this suit. Thanks, Total Boat. I would have been taking a bath in special thinner 100, I think. Before I started the bottom paint, I added some of the starboard ceilings back in and removed the whole front seat area so I could paint all the parts. Later Monday night when I got back from the Lyman, the Lyman, but more about that in a little while, I decided to take the floor pieces and add some Total Tread paint to them. So I got a light gray and this is a non-skid paint. So I worked on that and also put a coat of topside primer on one piece of that front cockpit area so I can paint that later on with a topside paint. Okay, so we were just talking about the floors today, Jay and I, when we were talking on the phone about the Lyman, and we were saying how much we hate that vinyl that goes on the floors in a lot of the boats. And I really decided I didn't want that stuff, but also if you paint the floor of a boat with just regular paint, it's really slippery. It's dangerous. This Total Tread is not a sand paint. It has something else in it for the part that's not slippery. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't feel like sand. So it's supposed to be not as bad on your feet. So I'm hoping that that is going to work good. The color obviously was pretty bad in that image because it was not that light in there compared to the daytime. So that's what happened with the Chris Craft, and that's pretty much one day. What you saw in that video was pretty much Monday, yesterday. So today's Tuesday, right? Yeah. So I did also work on the Lyman. So let's look at that, and then we can talk about that a little bit afterwards. So here's the dilemma. I could say, forget it. The Lyman is just going to stay in here for the summer. No big deal. I'll use the Chris Craft. But realistically, launching the Chris-Craft could happen in June, barring any unforeseen problems. We all know how likely that is. And at the end of June, early July, the Chris-Craft goes in the water. It's much less of a big deal to put the Chris-Craft in the water because for this, I've got to get somebody with a hydraulic trailer. For the Chris-Craft, I just put it on a trailer and launch it myself. So that makes that much easier. So if I do that, I've never had this boat in before the beginning of July. There's always work to be done, and I've always got other things going on, so it's not much different than a normal year. The problem is, if I have a problem with the Chris-Craft, and I go to put it in at the end of June, and I've got issues that have to be dealt with, and it's another 2 weeks before I can get a part, or whatever happens, now I'm in the middle of July, and I still don't have a boat other than the skiff in the water. And for me, that's a problem. The issue with the Lyman is, I'm looking at 2 weeks of work to get the Lyman to where I feel comfortable putting it in the water. So that means 2-week delay on the Chris-Craft, but it means that realistically, and very realistically, at the beginning to middle of June, this boat is in the water, because I know this boat doesn't have any issues with the motor or anything. It's just, you get the paint done, you get the finish done, bam, you launch it. And I work for the guy that has the hydraulic trailer, so he's gonna get me in. That's not gonna be a problem. So here's what this looks like after sanding. Now, obviously, that is sanded through right there, but that was through before. I mean, that's been a bad spot. But in general, I mean, especially compared to what it looks like down there, what I've lived with for years with failed varnish and varnish over failed areas, and the front deck has never looked anything but passable. This, with some filler stain on it, is going to look fantastic and very even. And that's what I'm going for. Now, we've got issues on the windshield. You can see where that's failed, but that was failed there last year. It didn't take very long. I started out with the sander with 40 grit, and then 60 grit, and then 80 grit, and then the hand sand paper right there. I'm not sure what's on there. That's 80 as well. And this looks really good. The Bosch sander doesn't leave those random orbital marks. So I mean, this is almost ready for stain. Excuse me, and it didn't take very long. With the filler stain, we can live with where I put the Dutchman down there. You can see that Dutchman, and that's sanded through a little bit because I screwed up on the height of that because, you know, I'm learning when you guys are learning. And that rotted area, but I think with the filler stain, I think we're gonna make this look really nice. And it won't just be a 1-year deal. I'll throw 2 coats on the interior because the interior varnish looks pretty good still. I don't have any failures in there. Maybe a touch in that one seat there is, but I can fix that. So that's where I am. I'm sorry to shift gears on you guys back and forth all the time, but I think this is the way boating life is. I think it's the way it is for you guys, and I don't pretend that everything is fine and nothing ever goes wrong. I'm telling you what's happening in my life, and at 58 years old, I don't want to lose a summer. And this is what I'm going to do to save my summer. Heck, by July, middle of July, I might have 2 boats in the water. I don't know where I'm going to park the other one, but maybe I'll pull the Lyman out. We'll see. I used to accomplish this. Now, I've been here, I think the total time I've spent on this section, the tow rail, this, and the front of the king plank that the camera is sitting on, is about an hour, a little under an hour and a half, because I was doing time lapses, 30-minute time lapses, and the third one, I only got about halfway through. So let's figure it was an hour and a half. Well, this is a pretty good accomplishment in an hour and a half. I'm going to show you that in a minute. This isn't quite ready for stain, but it's one good hand sand with this thing away from being ready. I continued working on the Lyman and got the whole interior scuffed and ready for varnish. I do have some more video of me with the scraper, explaining how I use them and which ones I use. And I'm gonna add that into Friday's recording of this video as a bonus video. So if you wanna see that, go to the end of Friday's video and rewatch that. Whoa, sorry about the sound. It got a little loud there, but I did just finish that video less than a half an hour ago. So, and I never did tell you guys, I said I'd get back to that one section. On the front of the bow, when you have a section of wood that is plywood, you have to be very careful when you start stripping the varnish and the stain as you get near the edge. Because even if you're using a flat sander and you bring it back, you tend to roll a little bit downward towards that edge, and you could sand through that veneer very fast. The veneer, the top veneer of the plywood, is very thin. So you have to be careful of that. It's the reason that the plywood is cheaper than solid wood, is they're not using very much of it. I don't know if you guys know how a piece like the one that's on the Lyman that has those big swirls in it, that's rotary cut. So they have a log. If the log looks like this, they actually peel it, almost like one of those Swiss rolls. They just peel all the wood off there in one continuous strip. And that's why you get that strange looking grain. And that's where it comes from. Well, I'm glad to see that most of you guys seem to be agreeing with my decision about the Lyman. It wasn't an easy one, but have to be realistic about it. So I'm glad that everybody showed up. I'm sorry about all the trouble at first, but we'll get this figured out eventually. I brought this with me. This is a carbide scraper, and it's very sharp and it's great for little spots, but man, it can do a lot of damage really fast. If you come down like this and you get in too close, you're digging a groove on the edge of this king plank, and that's a no-no. So this is used sparingly. This is a cheap reversible blade. You can see, hold it right here for you. You can see that the blade is really rounded. And because I've used it so much, it's worn down more on one side or the other because I'm right-handed. And I've sharpened it a lot of times. I did not sharpen this before I started today, and I did not sharpen this during the day today. And it's still working pretty well. Sometimes it's a fine line between sharpening too much, because you use a file to sharpen this, and if you're not careful, you can end up with grooves in here, which you'll end up with a groove in the wood. So you do want it flat. That's very handy, and this will still take stuff off. I mean, you pull that and it's gonna remove some varnish. It's a lot harder with this. But it's also easy to shape this blade. This comes straight, and I curved it on the side so I don't dig in, which is the #1 problem that occurs with scraping. This is a carbide scraper. It's a reversible blade. You can pull the screw out, flip that around, which I did today for the first time since I bought this. But this is curved end to end. Has a nice, very shallow arc. And this thing is really nice. I've never dug into the wood with the corners of this thing because of the shape of it. You can sneak into the side of a king plank. You can come this way on the king plank. And because this is flat on the side, it just doesn't seem to gouge. As if you watch the time lapse, you realize that more and more I was using this and not the sander. It's always an experiment when you start scraping varnish, because different brands of varnish scrape off in different ways. How long it's been on there makes a difference. Whether it was inside or outside, how many years. I mean, there's so many variables. Until you start messing around with it, you're not gonna know what's gonna work the best. You gotta experiment a little bit. Don't get stuck into one thing and not try something else. You may discover you can save half the time by using a different tool. Also, you don't know if this deck was varnished at the same time as the rear deck. Sometimes people do sections at a time. So maybe this is a lot easier to get off than the stuff in the back. You can see, let me take my glove off here so I can control this thing. You can see just how bad of condition this varnish is in. You can see last year where I put a couple coats just on top of the bare stuff that I sanded down, just to save it from turning black, is the only reason I did that. I didn't want it to discolor. Yes, did this get out of control really fast? But this is an hour and a half to do this. I mean, okay, so if I was here another 2 hours, I'd be down this king plank and all the way across the deck, and I would meet this part in with that part that I did yesterday. So that isn't that much time. So let's say on a good day, in less than a day, I could go from the bow all the way to the back and do the, come on, gimbal, and do the rear deck as well back there. You know, half the boat, covering boards and deck in less than a day. And that's, you know, you don't want to come into this not having done it before, because you're going to be pretty tired at the end of the day, and the second day is going to be a little tough. But the tow rail is ready to go. I've got that all done. Mostly what I used on that was that little cheap scraper. Occasionally I did use this one, and I used the sander. I love the sander. I wish I could find another one. I probably bought this 30 years ago. And I do also love this sandpaper. I get it at Lowe's. This one's worn out. I'm just going to tear it off. It's 3M, no slip grip, lasts longer. This 80 grit, it's just amazing stuff. It lasts really well. It doesn't rip. It doesn't tear through on these corners very quickly. And then when I get to this point, I then flip it over and use it by hand. So I highly recommend that stuff. I buy it in the package of like 25 at Lowe's. It's pretty reasonable, and it lasts a long time. So we've made headway. Yes, as you can see, I've committed to getting the Lyman out.